Welcome to our XERA for Plaintiff Firms overview. This is not intended to replace a proper demonstration where we can better address the specific needs and interests of your particular firm in a much more interactive setting. It is designed, however, to help you better understand how XERA not only fits, but excels in many areas of the plaintiff's workflow. By its very nature, this is a generalized presentation that we hope will pique your interest in reaching out to us to learn a little more. Since our inception in 1999, iConnect software has been embraced by many of the world's largest defense firms, and we're no strangers to working in that area. Over the last number of years, the sheer volume of data has drawn more and more firms from the plaintiff side to embrace advanced review tools to better manage complex matters. A few key issues for plaintiffs automatically jump out as being additional hurdles to overcome, though, in compared to a standard review scenario. Oftentimes, you're involved in class action MDLs, which by its very nature means you have many multiple parties involved. Very hard to standardize on software and infrastructure. Is this something that's going to be handled in-house by a particular firm, or is this something that's best suited to go out to a service provider? In any regard, that clearly brings out many varied levels of users, a lot of different experience coming in. This isn't like a set firm that has a litigation support department that's standardized everybody on IE, for example. You happen to have different firms coming in. Maybe some firms prefer to work in more of a Mac environment. Maybe you have a lot of small firms, solo practitioners, a lot of people that end up working from home offices, etc., that are going to be jumping into a particular database. As such, a tremendous number of training issues that may come up in and around that. Obviously, being able to enhance and facilitate collaboration across these groups, being able to simply provide communication, feedback on certain documents or important information you find in a database, etc. And then, of course, for those firms that like to run review tools in-house, generally speaking, smaller internal support teams. You don't happen to have 50 folks sitting in lit support with a lot of technical background sort of at your beck and call as you need it. Generally speaking, you tend to have more troublesome OCR. It never ceases to amaze me, despite the fact that I know what comes out in a production set from a review platform. It never ceases to amaze me sometimes the things I see that are actually handed over in a production set. So the OCR tends to just have a little more quirks associated with it. More often than not, in those production sets, you have very limited access to the natives and only images of the data. While it's always best to receive native files, being able to manipulate and still work with a lot of the functionality that review platforms bring you when you are dealing with maybe a mixed or a hybrid database where we've got some natives, things like Excel files, but a lot of the other stuff is imaged out. Still being able to work effectively with all of that is of a tremendous asset. Going back to the many multiple parties stepping into your review platform, there are always issues around ensuring proper workflow parameters are followed. A great example of that deals with some of the coding requirements and some things that I've seen in particular in some of the plaintiff projects I've been involved in myself in the past. We'll take a closer look at that within the database itself. And then being able to properly track all of the work done by all of the parties. It's not quite as simple as simply sending out your billable hours to a corporate client with a bunch of deep pockets. We know all of that really doesn't get sorted out until the end of the day when a project is wrapping up. Being able to properly track and measure the work being done by all of your users in a system to help you better apportion out their responsibility for the success of a particular project. And at the end of the day, with all of those things on top of it, the goal is still to try to have a very effective, efficient review. I'm going to jump us inside of a database here. A couple of things before we move much further. Obviously, security is always a concern. Being able to lock down, restrict certain areas from certain users, whether or not we talk about outside experts coming in to help you with some technical documents, different levels of review teams, etc., or even just turning off functionality to simplify it for users that just don't have to worry about doing certain things in the system. Their task is actually quite simple. This is my demo site, so you're going to see a few buttons in through here today that can very easily be disabled and completely removed from the interface for users. But as it is a demo site, generally speaking, everything is turned on in the event that I need to show that off. Right when we come into the system, we see the way we address that first real issue around multiple users, varied firms coming in. XERA is one of the only platforms that's completely done in HTML5. Why is that even important? All it really means for you is the fact that it has multi-browser support. You do not have to try to standardize on IE, for example, like traditional review tools that allow web-based access. You're definitely not using or forced to use any sort of a Citrix connection to make any of this stuff work. Chrome, Firefox, Safari, IE, they're all supported inside. Makes it extremely easy to roll out across an expansive review team, again, that may have a preference. Mac shops coming in on Chrome, for example. You may have your tablet or your iPad users, those attorneys that have ditched walking around with a laptop. They're going to come in via Safari, for example. And it's extremely beneficial to be able to jump from meeting to meeting, pull out your tablet or your iPad, jump right in and grab documents in a folder, pull the images up, and actually begin working with that material. So again, tremendous assets as far as being able to truly get your web-based access, remote access to your system from anywhere in any manner and allow all of your users to get in very easily. As I come into the system, very clean as soon as I log in. Simply a listing of the projects that I have access to as a user down the side, and then the first place we begin to see that collaborative aspects, the messages and notifications area. This deals with any sort of internal messaging that may have been set up in the system, any sort of tasks that have been assigned, notifications, for example, a print job may have been done, production request may have been done, etc., as well as comments that may be tied specifically to documents or important information within a database. Best of all, I can jump right to those documents from here. I can delete these, I can reply to these, etc. And best of all, you don't actually have to be living within XERA in order to receive these notifications, these messages, etc. As you'll notice when we go through and I create one of these in real time, you have the option to send these out as external emails. So you'll receive that in your email, on your laptop, on your tablet device, on your smartphone, and be able to jump in and take a look at exactly what that user is notifying you about when they find a key piece of information they wish to share with you or other members of the team. This is also the first place we begin to see the very intuitive navigation within XERA. We wanted to get away from the notion of a million different windows popping up on screen that, of course, users have to be trained on how to work with. It can sometimes be confusing or complex for a lot of users. XERA mimics your tablets and your smartphones. Left to right, train car swiping. The entire database, 4 screens deep. If we're working with some analytics, it'll open up actually a 5th one for you. That's it. Left, right. A database itself is really only 2 screens. So again, simplification of that interface to allow the intuitiveness to take over. Because I'm actually on a PC, I recorded this, you'll see I have little arrow keys where I actually on a tablet, finger swiping would work. Now, I'm going to swipe us right into this particular project dashboard, and I'm going to see a number of things that are all specific for me as a user. I have a whole series of tiles that have been set in place here, and they are all custom to me on this particular project. For example, I have a tasks tile. If I just expand that out, I can take a look at my incomplete tasks. I can add those to Outlook if I'd like to. I can come in the event that we're dealing with a batch-based review. If we've sorted the documents out in that particular manner, as a user, I can come in, check in or check out my batches, easily acquire them, etc. Best of all, your batches can be set up in those traditional methods based off of things like custodians or sources, off of a quantitative method, so many documents in each batch, or you can make use of intelligent batching and run analytics behind the scenes for the user. The user doesn't have to do anything to benefit from this, whereby all it really means is their batches are organized based off of threads, near dupes, so those documents are very similar to each other, or conceptually similar documents. Leads to a much more efficient review because all the material in their batch is somehow related to itself. Make quicker decisions, make quicker coding decisions as they walk through. Comments panel that allows me to deal with just my filter down project specific comments as opposed to everything across the entire system. A listing of my project team members sitting at the top here. If I want to send IRAM a message or a task, I can do so directly from this particular stage. Send a note to my outside expert letting them know that we've released or added a few new documents for their science opinion, etc. Some of the reporting and review metrics can be listed up on our dashboard. Can refresh these in real time as well to keep tabs on how the review is actually progressing. That's using our iView functionality. We're going to create some of those in today's session as we walk through the videos. You can see how that's all done. Those important reports, you can have them pinned right to your dashboard. And then as well, shortcuts to a number of the panels you may be using, whether or not they're organizational panels, things like custodial panels, to be able to jump right into that data, issue coding panels, take a quick look at the manufacturer oversight documents, etc. Coding panels, panels for my outside expert. When Dr. Silas Clay comes in, he can essentially click on his panel, his name, and grab the documents that have been set aside for him right from here. I'm going to swipe into a database. We see a very familiar list view in place. Set up very much like a standardized spreadsheet, very popular among that review tool scenario. Look at a lot of documents at once, fully customizable regardless of the field structure that's included in your load files and your production sets. If you'd like to add or manipulate or change those, very easily done. Users can come in and set up different viewing templates as well. So if there's a particular order I as a user like to look at, very easily able to come in and do so. Down the left hand side, I deal with my folders, different ways to go about organizing the data as we've received them. Maybe you want to organize based off the different production sets that have come in, organize based off of things like custodians, organize documents for those outside experts or different levels of review or different firms that are coming in that are going to be responsible for certain areas of the database. Maybe you want to set up your issue coding inside of here, etc. Again, lots of flexibility, fully customizable. Thousands of folders can be situated on any particular tree. You can add many, many subfolder levels inside. So again, it can be very granular for your team. Users that like to work out of a list view can check off multiple documents and easily bulk add or remove. You may be given the rights to create new folders on the fly in here. You don't have to worry about going to an administrator for something like that. And one thing that's been tremendously popular is the simple notion, as we see here. I hover over my Kathy Monahan custodial folder and I get my little pop-up descriptive box that tells me, hey, this is the COO of Medex, company we're looking at in this particular matter. I've seen it jump in many times in that plaintiff side to help with things like the subjective coding manuals, as opposed to referencing some sort of an outside document. You know, to truly understand, if I put a document in the adverse events docs folder, what exactly does that mean? You can have that description added right here within the database. Once again, saves time from the user having to jump back and reference some sort of an outside material. And once again, it really is all about enhancing the efficiency of the review. That clearly brings us to being able to talk a little bit about searching in the system and some things that we've done to try to simplify things when you have a varied collection of users with varying levels of experience coming in. Many users like to work with the whole notion of field level filtering. Every field gives you the ability to filter on and run your keyword searching directly from there. I want to search on a record type, put in XLS, voila, it brings all that information back for me. A certain custodial name, maybe I want to search through the OCR field through this manner as well. Again, lots of flexibility. That can be easily combined with simple keyword searching using my quick search box in the upper left. Something that's been extremely popular is working with facets inside of a database. Now, facets, while you may not be entirely familiar with the term, the use of them, anybody who's done any sort of commercial web shopping or browsing in the last 6 or so years has seen this. Essentially, imagine the last time you went to an Amazon site or a travel site, any sort of a commercial website, they all follow the same parameters, and nobody ever taught us how to search across those sites. You don't build big, ugly keyword strings. Essentially, all of your products, your information sits in the middle of the screen, and down the left-hand side, you simply have nothing more than a series of categories with checkboxes. And with a few simple clicks, check here, 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 and here, you can filter down on an Amazon site and find the household appliance, the Kenmore toaster that's red and under $50 that you're looking for. And voila, the 4 options show up on screen. Similarly, we can take your record data information that you happen to have sitting in your database and set those up as facets. Fully customizable, it all depends on the type of data set you have coming in. Some very common types we've often seen are things like custodial or source types, dates, record types, etc. Best of all, they're dynamic. As we take a look here, we can see it lets me know based on searches, the filters I run, etc., how many values I have. And I can simply go, I want to look at this, this, and this. Add my check, 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 up or down the side, update my list, and voila, it applies that filter to my data. Works extremely well as a bit of an early data assessment tool as well, because we can come in and see where we may wish to prioritize our review, types of information we have sitting inside of the system. For example, if we know that February of 2002 is an important time frame in our particular project, I can take a quick look in here and see that, guess what? February of 2002 just does not exist in my database. And if we know we've collected everything, all produced, then we know it just doesn't exist. Or we know we have yet to actually go and collect everything within the system. Some users, however, like to come in and make use of very complex searching inside the system. Another key area for those users that consider themselves power users that really like to roll up their sleeves and get involved in building very complex searches is to use the custom search form and the custom search builder we have in place here. It's really designed to allow the truly novice user the ability to come in and still build extremely complex searches across the data inside of the system. Essentially, I don't have to know how to build these searches. I can simply put in the type of terms I'm looking for and the type of search I want. We will put that string together for you. A number of ways we can come in, work with building a quick search, things like advanced Google searching. Find me all of these words, at least one of these words, etc. All of your saved searches and your search history are found through here as well. So when you want to layer or rerun searches time and time again, limiting our search down to specific folders, working with things like lookup lists or pick lists, something that's been tremendously popular amongst my Plaintiff clients has been the dictionary lookup. The idea behind the dictionary lookup, of course, is while you can run wildcard searches to deal with some of the troublesome OCR, we've talked about that a little bit at the beginning. The issue, of course, is wildcard searches capture a lot of stuff and they will bring back a lot of results that may not have anything to do with what it is you're looking for. Here you can be much more specific because it actually gives you a snapshot of all of the hits within your index. So it's not a true dictionary, as it were, just every possible variation of the sun. It's actually looking at your index. You can see here is a great example. On my little search, it brought back the arthroplasty word with a bunch of numbers that have been blended in at the end. Great example of this reminds me a few years back when I was doing some end user training in person down in St. Louis for a large MDL that we were working on. 55 attorneys had come down into the document repository room, and literally right before the session they informed me, hey, we've loaded up the first productions that have come in. Can we do the training in our data system as opposed to just your generalized data, because it'll make more sense for the end users. So 1.3 million records. I very quickly scrambled, managed to find the word on a document, investigate. It had actually been spelt wrong. I thought, great, I'll at least have a value that's going to come back for me when I run this so it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. When I ran that keyword search for the group, no results came back. 1.3 million records in the database, no results. However, I put in my INV here in my dictionary lookup, and we got a whole list of results that were exactly what we were looking for. However, the E's had been changed out with 3's, the S's were 5's or Z's, the I's in the latter half of the word were lowercase l's or 1's, etc. And it was literally as if every eyeball in the room lit up because it was something that they've all encountered before. And right off the bat, we knew exactly these are the keyword matches you guys have sitting inside of your database. And now it's just that much easier to find what it is you're looking for. Carrying on, we can take a look and narrow down to specific date ranges, proximity searches when it's important to know how closely related certain terms are to each other, etc. So again, tremendous flexibility afforded inside, once again, to better address that varied user group. How do I dig through and find information easily with minimal training inside of a system? One other area, very unique to XERA, deals with a recently rolled out feature called iView, which is the ability to come in and build yourself visual graphs of both data in the system as well as review metrics. We're going to look at it in the area here of searching, bring this up and simply saying, look, I want to display my data by field or folder. And I'm just going to build a very simple vertical bar graph in place here, where I want to come in and say, you know what, I'd love to see all of the record types balanced against and broken down by my custodians or my sources. Go. And it builds my graph for me, and as opposed to a big list that I need to sort through, visually lets me see where my record types are and how large of a percentage of my custodial population these are. If there was something in particular that caught my attention, I can zoom in, take a closer look. Best of all, these are dynamic. If I want to take a look at the Excel files from Dr. Calvert's home PC and take a look at the documents flagged as email, all I need to do is click on those and you'll see they're added as filters into my system. So I can essentially use that as searches, combine it with all of the other searching we've talked about and the other filters we've talked about, etc. So it gives me a tremendous variety in being able to come in and see where my data is sitting. I can easily change these graphs on the fly. If I decide I didn't like that representation, I'd like to see it a little bit differently, show this to me in a percentage stacked graph, whereby I can see my Excel files make up about 10% of Dr. Calvert's documents in place here. The email makes up about 30%. The rest are loose files, etc. Maybe I want to use this to help prioritize my review. Maybe you want to use this to find documents that you know certain reviewers tend to be stronger on and apportion those out to those reviewers. Once again, it's all part of a much more efficient review. We're going to be taking a look a little bit later on at how iView can be used to assist me with some of the various review metrics in the system. Now, as I move forward, we talked a little bit about the fact that at best you tend to get a hybrid mixed database. Generally speaking, not as many natives, tends to be more images, etc. A couple of key things as I swipe in over here. All the documents that I'm dealing with in my batch and my review, etc., listed down the side here, so I can easily jump around to different documents and take a look at different data if I'd like to. Images or natives show up in the middle of my screen here. I can blow those up full screen if I want to. I can also pull those over into a separate review monitor. So if you happen to work with dual screen monitors, fully supported, etc. Obviously, working with natives always has its benefits. Good example, if your OCR is really lousy, you can always reprocess, etc. But we can do a couple of other neat little things in here with our documents. If there happens to be hidden documents with your natives, you can expand those out using our Show Hidden Data field to show up email header information, for example, collapsed columns and spreadsheets, things that tend to get missed in a standard native file viewer. But the whole notion of persistent hits highlighting or word marking in XERA language carries over as well. You'll notice down the left-hand side I happen to have a list of terms of importance. Regardless of what I'm doing, I need to know if these terms show up on a document. Maybe they'll assist me with coding. I happen to see hot pink. I know exactly how I want to flag that because it contains certain terminology. The list down the side for our word marking is dynamic. You'll notice there are values associated with this. As I jump from record to record, those will change accordingly. I can turn these on or off depending on whether or not I need to focus on that list of terms or not. Maybe I'm part of a separate review team, etc. They're editable. You can export out a list of these terms for reports, etc. Not only do they work on natives, as we've discussed, there are often issues with a hybrid database or only images inside. They also work on the text view of the document, so you can still see where these terms will show up and arise. Obviously a true benefit, especially when you're dealing with mixed data sets. The next area we talk about deals with the coding of the documents and some of the enhancements in there that really tap into some of the issues faced by our plaintiff firms. Obviously, a great deal of flexibility. You can see the various panels in place here for different review teams, different types of review, different scenarios, etc. Much like we saw with our folders panel earlier. We can obviously make use of things like coding rules to automate pushing documents from one area to the next. And one area of particular importance deals with the notion of navigation rules and how that affects and benefits the workflow that I've often seen in plaintiff projects I've been involved with in the past. A great example, across the board, regardless of the type of designations you're looking for, I've often seen something along the lines of there's a certain category of documents, for example, hot documents. Regardless of what you're doing, if you flag a document as hot, you must give some further information. Oftentimes in the past we've seen things like put a sticky note on the document, write back into an attorney's notes field. Why is this document flagged as hot versus anything else? The issue, of course, is really up until this point in time, there's no way to force your users to do that, to help streamline and essentially enforce that workflow. So there's a lot of issues towards the end of the project, going back, QCing the documents, where were notes missed, user flags it as hot and they move on to the next document, etc. Trying to find this information, find who coded it, go back and determine why exactly does this document fit with this designation. In XERA, we can absolutely do that. Now in my demo database, I've set up a rule on my confidential folder here. And we'll imagine that's my hot document. Once it's been coded, if I try to navigate off this document and move anywhere else, change a tab, swipe over to a different document, etc., it's forcing me to fill in some further information, whether or not you want to make use of something like pick list coding for issues, whether or not you want to type in free-form attorney notes fields, etc., date fields. All of those things can be forced on. The user is unable to move past this, so we really truly do flag for that user and hold them accountable to the review they're conducting. You flag it as hot, you have to give me a reason why. I'm going to come in here and remove that designation, and it will now allow me to move off of this document. We talked a little bit early on about collaboration. We've seen a few hints as we come through. And the ability to find important text on a document, not only jump directly to the key text, I mean rarely does an entire document from top to bottom contain everything you need to know, lies here on my comments panel. And furthermore, the ability to communicate this on the fly with members of your team is key. Here's a great example. Let's say on this particular document, we're 43 pages in of a 500-page document. I see this paragraph and I think that's important. All I simply need to do is come in and highlight it. I can move over, create a comment to come with this. I'm going to say this is key for the Jones Depot. I can make these personal notes. I can choose to notify a particular user. And you could also send these as external email. A user doesn't have to be living within XERA in order to post that and to communicate that or receive those notifications. Now, because I'm actually in the system, I'll receive my notification in a few short moments. And if I was to come to this document and grab any of the comments that have been pinned in here and click on that, it automatically highlights and jumps me to that text. So I know exactly what is key for the Jones Depot. If I was to jump to a different comment, it takes me directly to that text as well. So that whole notion of easily finding the key information in a document, being able to share that with members of your team, being able to capture that down the road to make further use of it as the review, as the project, as your matter moves on, is really, really key here for my users. And in the event that you wish to make use of some analytics, how do analytics fit into my plaintiff review? These are things obviously that the defense bar has been using for a long period of time, but they can obviously benefit you as well. Easily being able to group together my email threads, my near duplicates, being able to use things like doc compare, which I think really jumps to the forefront for my plaintiff firms, where you tend to get a lot of near duplicates, not just pure duplicates, but near duplicates, documents that are so very similar to each other. Really, names and dates may have changed, but the bulk of the documents are the same. Why not be able to bulk code them and see exactly where those differences may exist? I simply come over to my related tab and I happen to have my breakdown here. I can look at my documents via threads, near dupes, similar concepts, etc. And if I was to come in and take a close look at my near duplicates, I can expand this out and you'll see I have a listing of my documents with some similarity scores in here. And if I decided I wanted to see all of the documents that are near duplicates to what it is I have up on screen here, I'm going to make use of doc compare. Grab my list, click my little doc compare icon, and it's going to give me a split screen side-by-side view and comparison of these two documents, my static document and then all of the comparison documents beside that. Very elegantly laid out. My subset listing is over on the left-hand side of the screen. My static document listed here on the left. Everything that's been removed is highlighted for me in red. On the comparison document, everything that's been added is highlighted in green. Much like keyword searching, we outline where all the differences are so you can jump to those. If I'd like to, I can very easily bring up the single static document, see what's been removed, bring up my comparison document, see what's been added. Further to this though, we replace the word marking tab with a little compare icon, which allows me to then come in and compare these documents and see exactly where all those changes are in a simple standard list. As I can see from my comparison list here, I can sort these to focus on larger chunks of text versus simple characters that may have been changed. It allows me to jump around from hit to hit, essentially, easily seeing where all of those differences may be in my documents. Best of all, again, sticking with the theme of comparison documents or issues between hybrid or mixed sets, while we can see here it works off of my natives, it also works in my text view of the document. When you only have images, for example, you can easily still compare the record data and the text view of that document to see not just changes within the document, but changes within metadata as well. For example, maybe an author field has changed between a couple of versions of a document. So again, very simple, very elegant to use. Clearly, we can also work with items like find similar functionality as well as exemplar, which is a feature that we've talked a great deal about in some of our previous videos dealing with custom find similar and virtual hot documents, etc. Now, as a bit of a wrap-up, I talked earlier about being able to find and make use and report on some of the metrics in the system. We saw a hint of that in the application of iView, the visualization graphing tool, as it applied to record data, but it can also be used to run comparisons and update the user metrics, who's doing what in the system. Obviously, very important on the plaintiff side, because clearly at the end of the day, unlike a defense firm that has billable hours, etc., nobody is really doing anything up until the project wraps up. And then it's the ability to be able to properly apportion out responsibility, who did what within the project, etc. Using iView, I'm going to simply select the ability to display by folder or tag, my review designations, my review data. Swipe on over. Again, I'm going to keep this as a vertical chart. And if we were to come in here and take a look at my users reviewing based off of folders. I'm going to expand out my hide options so we can see and roll my date back to the beginning of this particular project. You can focus on specific folders or users or coding designations, etc. I'm just going to run this as a basic user by folder. It's going to generate up my chart, and as you can see here, so iView comes up. We happen to have my designations across the bottom. With my users over on the side, I can see exactly who's been doing what. The bulk of data inside of my priv folder in place here happens to be done by Alex Lewis. On the fly, I can of course update and change these if I want to look at this just a little bit differently. Let's look at my folders based off of users. Rearrange my chart around where I can see my different reviewers across the bottom and all the work they've done. It looks like most of the work has been done by this gentleman right here, clearly doing much more review or much more efficient review than some other users within the system. I could also break this down on the fly to take a look at a specific user and where they tend to be placing all of their data. Maybe there's a new member on the team you want to keep tabs on, for etc. In this case, I'll grab this particular user right here, demonstrate this as a pie chart, see if there's maybe an inordinate amount of documents that are receiving certain designations. Again, we can see exactly where they're coding all of this information. And best of all, as we saw during the introduction, You can take any of these that are important to you and you can save them as a tile and pin them onto your dashboard in place here. So you can easily come in at any point in time and refresh and get updates on how the review itself is progressing. As you can see, XERA brings tremendous value for and specifically addresses many of those pain points faced by our plaintiff side users. The elegant design is the result of a simple, intuitive interface blended with powerful workflow functionality, all from XERA, the platform that works the way you think.